Okay, here's our video on word problems with inequalities. Keep in mind when we do inequalities, these words, at most and at least. So if I had, let's say, x was at most, let's say 16, the number 16. So it can't be more. If it's at most, it can't be more. So the first thing you should do is put in that symbol, but it could be 16. So you could put a line underneath it. Remember this inequality sign. This is saying that x could be 16 or it's less than 16 because it's at most. So it's less than or equal to 16. So remember, that's at most. At least, that means it could be more. Right? It says it's at least 16. So that means it could be more. It could be 16 or more. So keep in mind these two when we do word problems. So let's look at a word problem. Let's say we had this. A truck can carry at most. So again, when you see that, you can underline that because that's a key word. At most 3,000 pounds of dirt. And it already has, so it's already carrying 256 pounds of dirt. So what kind of inequality can we make from this? Okay, so let's bring this up a little. So we can use t for the variable, or x, whatever you want to use. So we know that the truck, at most, remember that's at most, it could carry at most 3,000 pounds. So that's the first step. So let's add to it from there. Then it says it's already carrying 256 pounds. So I can say the truck plus it's carrying 256 pounds, right? It will be at least or equal to, let's bring that over, 3,000 pounds. That's what it's saying. So in this inequality, the truck, remember, it can hold, the most it can hold is 3,000 pounds. So this is telling you now of what it can carry. Up to what point? So you can just minus the 256, just like we do with linear equations, on both sides. Okay, and then you say, well, now the truck, what it can carry now, since it already has 256 pounds, you just minus that, and you get 2,744. So it could carry now at most 2,744 pounds, bring that up, because it already has 256 pounds. So that's how we made that inequality. Okay, let's look at another thing. Let's talk about methane for a minute, bringing science into math. So methane is a gas, and for extra credit it has, let's see, it has it has a carbon followed by 4 hydrogen atoms, and that's what it looks like in science. So that's methane, and methane is a gas. Now, in order for methane to turn into a liquid, it has to be really cold, colder than anything we have on Earth. It has to be at least minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's extremely cold. So now that we know that, we can look at a question about a moon in the solar system, Titan. So Titan is a moon of Saturn, and it has oceans. It has not oceans of water, it has oceans of liquid. So what do you think the temperature is at Titan based on what we just said? Well, we know that if it has oceans of methane, it also has oceans of ethane. So it has oceans of methane and oceans of ethane. And remember, in order for methane to be liquid, it has to be negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit. So the average temperature in Titan is extremely cold. So let's say we were at Titan, or there was a probe at Titan, and we saw this question. So let's say somewhere on Titan it was negative 230 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, that's at least 100 degrees colder than any place on Earth. So we know now that the methane on Titan, if it's negative 230 degrees Fahrenheit, is still a gas. So how many more degrees can you have before the methane turns to liquid? Okay, and Let's just say we remember that negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly, methane turns to a liquid. So how would you write an inequality for that? So you should pause the tape and write an inequality. You can use any variable, so if we want to use T again, so we know that on Titan, right, how many more degrees can you have before the methane turns to liquid? So the methane will turn to liquid at negative 260 degrees. What do you have already on Titan? So already on Titan you have a negative 230 degrees. Right? You don't have to put the degree sign. You don't have to put the Fahrenheit sign either. Now, this is not a minus sign. You want it to be less, at least, at most, that is, at most, or equal to negative 260. So remember to look at this very carefully. It says how many more degrees can you have before it turns to a liquid? So we don't want it to equal 260 degrees because then it will be liquid. So we want it to look like this then. We want it that the temperature on Titan plus negative 230, we want it to be less than 260 in this case. Because if we say the top one, you're saying that it could be negative 260. That's a negative, by the way. You don't want it to be negative 260 if you look into the question. How many more degrees can you have before the liquid turns, the methane turns to a liquid? So look for those tricks. So let's write this over now. Bring that up here. Erase this. So we're saying that at Titan, and by the way, you can just do minus 230. You don't have to do plus minus. We want it to be less than negative 260. Over. So again, we want to plus 230 on both sides. So what we have here now is that the temperature on Titan, before it turns into a liquid, another 30 degrees. So what this is saying is that the temperature could go down another 30 degrees. That's what that negative means. So you had 230 degrees, let's say in this area. It could go down another 30 degrees, and then it will turn into a liquid. So you want the temperature to be less than negative 30 degrees. Let's look at another question. Let's say the touchdown record at the high school was 60 touchdowns for the season. And let's say that already this season, the team this season has 48 touchdowns so far. So how many more touchdowns will be needed to go over the record? So pause the tape and make an inequality statement with that. Okay, let me erase it over here. So again, we have the high school. We can use X or H, whatever we want to use. So it already has, the record is 60, and we want to go over that. So we want it to be, we can tie it if you write something like that. But you don't want to tie it. You want to go over the record. You want to go over the record. You want X plus 48 to be greater than 60. So just minus 48 on both sides. And in order to go over the record, in order to break the record, X has to be greater than 12. Again, if we put the equal sign here and we said it was equal, that means we're not breaking the record. We tied the record. So keep that in mind, which inequality to use. We can also write that down on a graph. If we had a line graph here, and we say we had 12, we want X to be greater than 12. Because if X is greater than 12, we break the record. Okay, great job.